Which is better, every minute on the minute, also known as on the minute training, versus auto-regulated kettlebell workouts? When I was coming up as a greenhorn strength and conditioning coach under the mentorship of my weightlifting coach, Alfonso Duran, who also was a member of the Cuban weightlifting pre-select national team, I was focused, I don't think focus is the right word, let's say obsessed about designing, building, crafting what I call the perfect program. And one of the things inside the perfect program was the perfect rest period. For example, here was a common heuristic, I think that's how you pronounce it, that I used. So for heavy weights, we would use 1 to 3 reps per set, and we'd rest 3 to 5 minutes per set. For moderately heavy weights, we would use 4 to 6 reps per set, and we'd rest 2 to 3 minutes between sets. For moderate weights, we'd used 8 to 12 reps per set, and we'd rest 90 seconds to 2 minutes between sets. Now, for lightish weights, we'd use 12 to 20 reps per set, and we'd rest 60 to 90 seconds per set. And then for the light weights, which we'd consider 20 plus reps, we'd rest between 30 and 60 seconds per set. And you know what? It didn't work half bad. In fact, it worked pretty good. But, this system had its flaws. Namely, even with light weights, higher rep sets, we tend to accumulate, number one, oxygen debt, which is heavy breathing. And that's, of course, dependent on the exercise because, 20 reps with curls is going to have a much different effect on your body than 20 reps of squats. Number two is the pump or the burn, and that's depending on the exercise, again, kind of like I talked about in number one. And number three, sometimes we'd have a combination of both of them, oxygen debt and the pump or the burn. And those make short rest periods an absolute bear. Again, especially when using compound exercises like the squat. It's survivable when you're young in your late teens and early 20s, but it'll take it out of you, man. It'll take you behind the woodshed, as they say, if you're over 40. So although OTM work, on the minute work, training has been around since about the 1960s, I personally didn't start using it until about 2004. And if you're not familiar with OTM work or on the minute work, some people call it every minute on the minute or EMOM work. It's where you do a set of reps for your specific exercise. When your timer hits, 0, so you're going to start when it says 0.00. Then you're going to perform your reps, and then you're going to rest for the remainder of the minute. Okay, now usually, but not always, if you're going to make this thing work for you, it better be lower reps, okay, especially depending on the exercise. Again, higher reps you can get away with like single joint exercises like bicep curls, but you're not going to get away with a set of 20 reps on a barbell back squat on the minute, okay, and survive very long. So typically we use reps of 10 per set per less depending on the exercise, okay? So sometimes, I know I just said don't do 20 reps on things like squats, but sometimes depending on the individual and whether he or she is highly conditioned, you can get away with doing something like 20 reps per set using the kettlebell swing. The truth of the matter is OTM or EMOM, as CrossFit popularized it, right, is a fantastic way. I will say this again. It's a fantastic way to organize your training, your workouts, and keep you on a specific training schedule so that you stay focused and consistent and you see the results that you're looking for. Especially if you're one of those guys who's prone to distraction. You got that smartphone working and you're checking the book of faces, your email, whatever social medias you have on there between sets, and you forget that it's time to actually work out. Now, personally, I find that OTM work is particularly good for conditioning. Like I said, I used it back in 2004, and at that time I was using it with kettlebell snatches, and I would do something really hard, like sets of 2 or 3 on the minute, right? I joke because we used to joke around in the old RKC days, anything more than 5 was cardio. Any set more than 5 reps was cardio. And that kind of is true for guys who are wired for power and maximum strength like myself. So how did the OTM sets work? Well, they work great for building what we call a bigger tank, right? More work capacity. Now, the problem that I found is that if you are using OTM for low rep strength or power work, it won't always. So, all right, don't leave me a comment and say it works great for you. All right. I'm saying it can work against you. Now, that is especially true if you're using a high percentage of your RM, any particular RM, 1 RM, 4 RM, 5 RM, 10 RM. What do you mean by that, Jeff? Well, look, we'll throw this example up here on the screen so you can see it. So let's say you're using your 5 RM. So a set of 1 rep or 2 reps on the minute with a 5 RM of any particular exercise, like let's say the clean and press, because that's one of my favorite kettlebell exercises. Well, that's tolerable, right? And in fact, it's downright manageable for many guys. That is a 40% effort using the 5 RM. That is if you're using 2 reps per set. So sets of 3 and 4 reps are not 40%, right? They're greater than that. And they're especially more taxing or more difficult at the beginning of a training cycle. And that's because if you're using 4 reps of a 5RM, you're using 80% of your max. Now, when you're using that kind of load and you haven't built into it, well, fatigue builds really quickly and your technique starts to fall apart as you chase those reps to stay OTM on the minute. And you tried to slide them right after the timer goes off. Now, why is that exactly? Well, that's because you're experiencing 2 different types of fatigue that aren't correlated directly with one another. The first type of fatigue is neural, right? That's nervous system fatigue. And the second type of fatigue is metabolic, right? Or energy production fatigue. You'll recognize the first, the neural fatigue, when several things happen. Number 1, your speed of your repetition will drop off between reps. Number 2, your technique changes. So what's happening is you're actually losing coordination. And number 3, you can't actually feel your body like you could on the earlier sets. The second, metabolic fatigue, shows up in the following ways. Number 1, you actually get muscle fatigue, right? You get that pump in your muscles. Your muscles actually get tired. Number 2, your reps become grinding instead of snappy. So this is where you see the slowdown between reps inside a set. So yeah, there's a little bit of a correlation there with the neural aspect of it. And number 3, you've got some heavy breathing that you're accumulating, and you can no longer match your breathing or your recovery to your timer, if that makes sense. So typically you increase neural fatigue with lower reps when you're using OTM work, and you increase metabolic fatigue with medium to higher reps using OTM work. Now, here's the thing. You can avoid both types of fatigue to an extent, or to a greater extent, I should say, when you use what I call autoregulation. That's simply hitting your next set when you feel fresh enough to, number 1, breathe without gasping and passing the talk test. I really like breathing through your nose as a good indicator. So the talk test also, if you're not aware of it, it's simply being able to speak, right, like the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star Spangled Banner, or, a stanza from your favorite song without gasping between words like this, right? So number 2 is you keep your kettlebell speed high and, more importantly, consistent or constant if you prefer. So there's no speed drop off between reps of any particular set. And number 3 is reduced or minimal muscular fatigue. Now, here is why using autoregulation is what I think personally is critically important, especially as we age and we crest the magic 40 number, especially in your 50s and 60s. And that's because stress has a way of accumulating and sticking around inside your body. So it looks like this, right? You get shortness of breath, or you find yourself holding your breath throughout the day. You get tightness in your neck, your upper back, like your traps, or your lower back, or everybody's favorite, which is just feelings of anger, frustration, or worse, sadness and depression that seem to come on out of nowhere. All right. Those are all symptoms of accumulated stress. And that's just to name some of them, right? That's not even all of them. Now, what's important is that these stress, right, symptoms, for lack of a better term, they change your state, right, which is your daily energy levels, or you can think of it as maybe your arousal levels, but not that kind of arousal, although I heard that is a problem for some guys, okay? So if you're always using on the minute, some days you may do great and get a lot of sets. Other days you may actually just suck, right, and get a few and burn yourself out, or worse, injure yourself chasing your last workout numbers, right, which honestly can be discouraging. So this is especially true if you're using high rep sets or higher effort loads relative to your RM, right? Repetition maximum, that 1 RM, the 5 RM, the 10 RM. Autoregulation keeps this from happening, at least when you apply it correctly. So as a result, your training or your workouts, right, over the course of time takes on a wave-like pattern. So you'll see the training load and your effort levels go up and down, up and down, up and down, kind of like waves on an ocean, right? Or the stock market. So which is its own form of cycling, and the best way to see the results that you're looking for, which obviously is becoming stronger, becoming leaner, more muscular, better conditioned, those sorts of things, right? Now, am I saying that you shouldn't use OTM training at all? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you're going to use it, right, you have to use it intelligently so you don't hurt yourself and you don't burn yourself out. That's the whole point of me making this video for you, okay? To give you some guidelines, and so that you can see, right, what those guidelines should look like and how you should feel while you're training, right? Pitfalls, in other words, to avoid. So if you actually need some OTM programming that doesn't burn you out, if you've used it in the past and it has, I'll leave a link to one of my best OTM training programs in the video description below. But the truth is, for many of us guys, personally, I like this, right? And I use this primarily as a form of rest in my training. Autoregulation is the way to go, especially if you're training for strength and power, which all of us guys over 40 need to be doing on a regular basis so that we can keep what I call our metabolic gold, those fast twitch muscle fibers that make us run faster, jump higher, lift heavier, and keep us from slipping and falling quite as much as we did if we don't have them. And that's because we lose this metabolic gold at a rate of 10% per decade, every decade over 30, which means if you don't specifically go out of your way to train those fast twitch muscle fibers, right? They're called the type 2X and type 2A fast twitch muscle fibers, then you will lose 40% of your muscle mass by the time you're 70 years old. All right. So that's pretty frightening. Personally, if you say, well, Jeff, what do you do? What do you use? Well, I use both OTM and autoregulation. But like I already said, the majority of my training is autoregulated. The key is, as Marcus Aurelius, famous Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, said, know thyself. So if you need some auto-regulated training programs, I'll leave a link to one of my most challenging yet rewarded auto-regulated training programs that will help you build your fast twitch muscle fibers so you can become stronger and more powerful as you progress through your 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I'll leave that link in the video description below. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, click the like button, smash that subscribe button, share with a friend you know who might have some confusion about which works better, on the minute or auto-regulation. And then finally, leave me a comment in the comment section below. What's your favorite? On the minute work, auto regulation? Have you tried both? All right. Until next time, my friend, stay strong.